Their parents did not provide economic outpatient care. Welcome back, my lovely friends. Today we are going to read Chapter 5, Economic Outpatient Care, of the Millionaire Next Door book. Before we start, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and comment below which book should we read next. Now let's get started. Dear Dr. Stanley and Dr. Danko, I just finished reading an article about your research on millionaires. My wife has an overdue trust that her parents won't release. My mother-in-law keeps putting us off with paperwork. She seems determined not ever to release the trust to my wife. Is it possible that you have come in contact with my wife's family in your research? Her name is Mary. Or perhaps you could suggest another source that would tell us how much is in the trust. Thank you, Mr. Lamar. The author of this letter and his wife urgently need money. The writer, we will call him Lamar, is the husband of a woman, we will refer to her as Mary, who comes from a wealthy family. Mary receives more than $15,000 in cash gifts annually from her parents. She has received gifts of this type, as well as other forms of help since she and Lamar got married nearly 30 years ago. Today she and her husband are in their early 50s. They live in a splendid neighborhood in a fine home. They are country club members. Both love to play tennis and golf. Both drives imported luxury cars. They wear fine clothes and are socially involved with several non-profit organizations. They were previously active in raising money for the private schools their children attended. Both enjoy vintage wines, gourmet foods, entertaining, high-quality jewelry, and foreign travel. Their neighbors think Lamar and Mary are wealthy. Some are firmly convinced that they are multimillionaires. But looks can be deceiving. They are not wealthy. Do they at least earn a high income? No, neither the husband nor the wife earns a high income. Mary is a housewife. Lamar is an administrator at the local college. Never in the couple's long marriage have the two ever had an earned annual income in excess of $60,000, even though they have a lifestyle similar to those with incomes of at least twice theirs. Some may suggest that this couple does an outstanding job of budgeting and planning. How else can they live so high with so few dollars of income? But Lamar and Mary have never put a budget plan together in all the years they've been married. They spend in excess of their income every year. They also spend all the money Mary receives from her parents. In short, Mary and Lamar are able to live so lavishly because they are the recipients of what we call economic outpatient care, EOC. Economic outpatient care refers to the substantial economic gifts and acts of kindness some parents give their adult children and grandchildren. This chapter will explore the implications of economic outpatient care, and how it affects the lives of those who give it and those who receive it. Many of today's distributors of EOC demonstrated significant skill at accumulating wealth earlier in their lives. They are generally frugal with regard to their own consumption and lifestyle. But some are not nearly as frugal when it comes to providing their children and grandchildren with acts of kindness. These parents feel compelled, even obligated, to provide economic support for their adult children and their families. What's the result of this largesse? Those parents who provide certain forms of EOC have significantly less wealth than those parents within the same age, income, and occupational cohorts whose adult children are economically independent. And, in general, the more dollars adult children receive, the fewer they accumulate, while those who are given fewer dollars accumulate more. Distributors of EOC often conclude that their adult children could not maintain a middle or upper middle class high consumption lifestyle without being subsidized. Consequently, an increasing number of families headed by the sons and daughters of the affluent are playing the role of successful members of the high-income producing upper middle class. Yet their lifestyle is a facade. These sons and daughters of the affluent are high-volume consumers of status products and services, from their traditional colonial homes in upscale suburbs to their imported luxury motor vehicles. From their country club affiliations to the private schools they select for their children, they are living proof of one simple rule regarding EOC: it is much easier to spend other people's money than dollars that are self-generated. EOC is widespread in America. More than 46% of the affluent in America give at least $15,000 worth of EIOC annually to their adult children or grandchildren. Nearly half the adult children of the affluent who are under 35 years of age receive annual cash gifts from their parents. The incidence of giving declines as adult children grow older. About 1 in 5 adult children in their mid-40s to mid-50s receive such gifts. Please note that these estimates are based on surveys of the adult children of the affluent and that gift receiver are likely to understate both the incidence and size of their gifts. Interestingly, when surveyed, gift givers report a substantially higher incidence and dollar amount of gift giving than their adult children who are the recipients. Much EIOC is distributed in lump sums or erratic patterns. For example, affluent parents and grandparents are likely to give their children entire coin collections, stamp collections, and similar gifts in one transfer. About 1 in 4 affluent parents has already given such collections to his or her adult children or grandchildren. Similarly, payment of medical and dental expenses is often precipitated by a grandchild's need for orthodontal work or plastic surgery. About 45% of the affluent have provided for the medical dental expenses of their adult children and or grandchildren. During the next 10 years, the affluent population in America, defined as those with a net worth of $1 million or more, will increase 5 to 7 times faster than the household population in general. Directly paralleling this growth, the affluent population will produce significantly more children and grandchildren than in the past. Economic outpatient care will increase greatly during this period. The number of estates in the $1 million or more range will increase by 246% during the next decade. These estates will be valued, in 1990 constant dollars, at a total of more than $2 trillion. But nearly the same amount will be distributed before millionaire parents become decedents. Much of this wealth will be distributed by so-called pre-decedent affluent parents and grandparents to their grandchildren. The costs to provide outpatient care will also increase substantially in the future. Private school tuition, foreign luxury automobiles, homes in fashionable suburbs, cosmetic medical and dental services, law school tuition, and many other items are increasing at rates that greatly exceed the general cost of living index. In addition, as our population ages, more and more affluent parents and grandparents are reaching the age of estate tax realization. Widows and widowers especially are becoming more aware that the government can take 55% or more of their estate via estate tax mandates. Thus, as the affluent grow older, they will increase the size and incidence of their EIOC in order to reduce the tax burden on their estates. How could Mary and Lamar afford the tuition to send their 2 children to private schools? They couldn't afford it. Mary's parents paid the bill. Unusual? On the contrary. Our survey research indicates that 43% of the millionaires in this country who have grandchildren pay for all or part of their private school tuition. We refer to such subsidies as third-generation educational enhancements. We recently discussed this form of outpatient care with an audience of affluent grandmothers. We provided them with the results of our surveys. We did not endorse or criticize such behavior. After our presentation, we answered questions. The third questioner took this opportunity to make a statement: "I'm as indignant as hell. What am I supposed to do with my money? My daughter's family is having a rough time making ends meet. Do you know about the problems with public school around here? I'm sending my grandchildren to private schools." It is obvious to us that this grandmother is not completely at ease about providing economic outpatient care to her daughter's family. The real problem is not with the public schools, it is that her daughter's family is in a situation of economic dependency. Mother has difficulty with the fact that her daughter married someone who is unable to earn a high income. Daughter and grandchildren may not be able to live in an environment congruent with mother's upper middle-class background. So mother is determined to enhance the environment of her daughter's family. She contributed heavily to the purchase of a home that was economically out of reach for her daughter and son-in-law. The home is in an upscale area where most of the residents send their children to private schools. The only way her children can stay in such a high-consumption residential area is with heavy doses of mother's brand of economic outpatient care. But mother fails to realize that such an environment has more drawbacks than does self-sufficiency, even if that means accepting a less affluent lifestyle. Mary is much like the daughter of the grandmother in our audience. Both have received economic outpatient care. The donors in both cases made the same assumption: economic outpatient care will get the youngsters going and then won't be needed anymore. Mary's mother was wrong. She has been providing her special blend of outpatient care for more than 25 years. Her daughter's family is economically dependent. Lamar has also benefited from outpatient care. Shortly after he and his wife were married, Lamar quit his job to pursue a master's degree. His own parents paid all his tuition and related expenses. This is not at all unusual. In fact, 32% of America's millionaires pay for their adult children's graduate school education. The couple's first child was born shortly after Lamar began his graduate studies. Mary's mother did not like the apartment that the couple initially rented near the university Lamar attended. She took it upon herself to send a cleaning crew over regularly to freshen the place up. But in her mind, this was not the ideal environment for her daughter's family. So mother offered to help the couple buy a home. Lamar did help to make ends meet. He received a few $100s each month from the university for his part-time job as a staff assistant. Mary did not work at that time. In fact, she has been a full-time housewife throughout her marriage. Mary's mother placed a sizable down payment on the couple's home. Nearly 6 in 10, 59%, affluent parents who have adult children tell us that they have provided their children with financial assistance in purchasing a home. Mary's mother also made the couple's mortgage payments. Note that 17% of the millionaires we have interviewed indicated that they have made such payments. Initially, Mary's mother was to provide these funds as an interest-free loan. But eventually, the loan was converted to a more conventional type. Forgiveness loans are considered to be quite conventional among recipients of economic outpatient care. 61% of America's affluent have provided such loans to their adult children. What happened when the couple traded up to a more expensive home? Mary's mother once again subsidized the purchase. Eventually, the couple moved to their current residence. Once again, economic outpatient care is part of this purchase. Lamar spent nearly 4 years in graduate school. During that time he received 2 degrees. Today Lamar is a college administrator. But given his annual salary of less than $60,000, it's still hard for Mary and him to make ends meet. Even with the $15,000 his mother-in-law provides each year, their income is not high enough to support their upper-middle-class lifestyle. What is so interesting about Mary and Lamar's $60,000 annual income level is that they are not alone. About 30% of the households in America that live in homes valued at $300,000 have annual household earned incomes of $60,000 or less. Is it because of creative budgeting, or could it be a result of widespread economic outpatient care in America? For the most part, it's because of UAWs on EIC. According to Mary, it's not too difficult to pay for basic family necessities out of Lamar's income plus her annual cash gift from mother. What is difficult is purchasing motor vehicles. And Mary and Lamar enjoy foreign luxury. How do they squeeze such purchases into their budget? Do they buy used cars to reduce the economic pain? No, they purchase new cars every 3 years. Why so often? Because that's mother's cycle. About every 3 years, Mary's mother gives her daughter stock from her portfolio. So do about 17% of America's affluent. Some adult recipients hold on to such gifts, but not Mary and Lamar. They sell the securities immediately, then purchase a new car with the proceeds. But what will happen to Mary and Lamar after mother is no longer alive? Obviously, this is a major concern to this couple. Unfortunately, we are not fortune tellers, so we were not able to tell them how much mother had in trust for her daughter. We wish them good luck. It will not take long for Mary and Lamar to consume even a good-sized inheritance. They are already anticipating this economic windfall. A bigger home, a vacation home, and around-the-world travel are on the horizon. What's wrong with this picture? Adults who sit around waiting for the next dose of economic outpatient care typically are not very productive. Cash gifts are too often earmarked for consumption and the support of an unrealistically high lifestyle. This is precisely what happened to Mary and Lamar. Their household's annual earned income of $60,000 is the same amount a blue-collar couple in their county earned with overtime. Both the man and woman drive buses for a living. Yet they have a more realistic view of who they are and what they have achieved. Conversely, Mary and Lamar are living in Fantasyland. Displaying upper-middle-class status is their socioeconomic goal in life. Does this mean that all adult children of affluent parents are destined to become Marys and Lamars? Absolutely not. In fact, stated as a statistical probability, the more wealth parents accumulate, the more economically disciplined their adult children are likely to be. Note that America's millionaires are more than 5 times more likely than the average household to have a son or a daughter graduate from medical school. They are more than 4 times more likely to have a child who is a law school graduate. Paying for an education is the equivalent of teaching your children how to fish. Mary's mother taught her daughter and son-in-law something else. She taught them how to spend. She taught them to look upon her as a fish dispensing machine. There are many forms of economic outpatient care. Some have a strong positive influence on the productivity of the recipients. These include subsidizing your children's education and, more important, earmarking gifts so they can start or enhance a business. Many self-made millionaires entrepreneurs know this intuitively. Unlike Mary's mother, they prefer to give their offspring private stock, which cannot be readily traded in for a new foreign luxury automobile. Conversely, what is the effect of cash gifts that are knowingly earmarked for consumption and the propping up of a certain lifestyle? We find that the giving of such gifts is the single most significant factor that explains the lack of productivity among the adult children of the affluent. All too often such temporary gifts affect the recipient's psyche. Cash gifts earmarked for consumption dampen one's initiative and productivity. They become habit-forming. These gifts then must be extended throughout most of the recipient's life. The subsidized lifestyle of many adults has another consequence. Neighbors see how Mary and Lamar live. What do they conclude? Too often it is that heavy spending is an acceptable way of life. For example, off and on for several years, Mary and Lamar have been on their neighborhood's welcoming committee. Remember that the couple has also been active in fundraising for the private school their children attended. What message do Mary and Lamar communicate to their new neighbors? Recently, a hard-charging, very successful sales manager vice president and his family moved into the neighborhood. The sales executive was only 35 years old at the time. He earned nearly 3 times more income than Lamar. He and his wife had 3 school-aged children. Within 10 minutes after welcoming his new neighbors, Lamar initiated his sales pitch. He told them that the public schools in the area were inferior but that he had a solution to this problem. Lamar began to lecture his new neighbors about the benefits of the private school. The new neighbors listened attentively. Then they asked about the tuition. Lamar told them the costs were much less significant than the benefits. The annual tuition at the high school, Lamar reported, was only $9,000. Lamar tells all his incoming neighbors the same thing, that is, that $9,000 is a small price for a great education. Why, of course, Lamar loves the school. It was a real bargain for him to send his children there since Mary's mother paid 100% of the tuition. Later the sales executive and his wife did some research on the local public school system. They found that it was far better academically than Lamar had told them. They decided that all their children would attend public schools. They were pleased with the quality education provided there. What is the value you place on private school education, luxury automobiles, foreign travel, and a lovely home? How sensitive are you to the prices of these products and services? Lamar is quite insensitive to high prices. The sales executive is just the opposite. Lamar finds it much easier to spend other people's money than his own. The sales executive, on the other hand, never received any economic outpatient care except for some of his undergraduate college tuition. The sales executive is fully self-sustaining today. Why? Because he and his family do not receive economic outpatient care earmarked for consumption. He spends much of his time enhancing his productivity by working harder and investing wisely. Conversely, Lamar and Mary spend much of their time anticipating the receipt of stronger doses of economic outpatient care. You may ask, will I spoil my adult children if I give them cash gifts? All the effects of cash gifts on the adult children of the affluent cannot possibly be presented in one chapter. And it is important to note that those who receive such gifts are not the jobless dropouts so often reported in the press. They are, in fact, likely to be well-educated and to hold well-respected occupational positions. The top 10 occupations of the adult children of the affluent are as follows. 1. Corporate executive. 2. Entrepreneur. 3. Middle manager. 4. Physician. 5. Advertising, marketing sales professional. 6. Attorney. 7. Engineer, architect, scientist. 8. Accountant. 9. College university professor. 10. High school, elementary school teacher. Nevertheless, it cannot be denied that adult children who receive cash gifts differ from those who do not. Let's contrast the wealth and income characteristics of adult children who do receive gifts with those who do not. Because age is highly correlated with both wealth and annual household income, it is important to attempt to hold age constant when making comparisons between gift receivers and non-receivers. It is also useful to examine the differences between these two groups within each of 10 occupational classifications, since different occupational groups tend to generate different levels of income and net worth. Giving precipitates more consumption than saving and investing. For example, affluent parents often subsidize their children's purchase of a home. The intent may be to help their children get started on the right foot. The parents assume that such gifts are a once-in-a-lifetime phenomenon. Some have told us that they thought this would be the last dollar the kids would ever need. They assume that the recipients of their kindness will be able to do it on their own in the near future. Nearly half the time, they are wrong. Gift receivers frequently are underachievers in generating income. All too often the income of the gift receiver does not increase at the same rate as his consumption. Remember, expensive homes are typically located in what we call high-consumption neighborhoods. Living in such neighborhoods requires more than just being able to pay the mortgage. To fit in, one needs to look the part in terms of one's clothing, landscaping, home maintenance, automobiles, furnishings, and so on. And don't forget to add high property taxes to all the other items. Thus, a gift of down payment, whether full or partial, can place a recipient on a treadmill of consumption and continued dependence on the gift giver. But the majority of these recipients' neighbors, more likely than not, receive no cash gifts from their parents. They are much more content and confident about their lifestyle than most gift receivers are. Many gift receivers in such situations become sensitive to the need for continued economic outpatient care. Their orientation may even dramatically change from a focus on self-generated economic achievement to one of hoping for and contemplating the arrival of additional gifts. Underachieving income producers in such cases find it nearly impossible to accumulate wealth. Gifts of down payments are not the only type that precipitates more consumption. Take, for example, the affluent parents who gave their son Bill and daughter-in-law Helen a $9,000 rug that we were told contained millions of hand-tied knots. Bill is a civil engineer who works for the state. He earns less than $55,000 a year. His parents feel compelled to help him maintain a lifestyle and level of dignity congruent with someone with a graduate degree from a prestigious university. Of course, the expensive rug looked out of place in a room filled with hand-me-down furniture and inexpensive light fixtures. So Bill and Helen felt compelled to purchase expensive walnut dining room furniture, a crystal chandelier, a solid silver service, and expensive lamps. Thus, the gift of the $9,000 rug precipitated the consumption of nearly that same amount for other affluent artifacts. Sometime later, Bill mentioned to his mother that the local public schools were not as good as they were when he was an elementary school student. His mother countered that she would pay for part of her grandson's and granddaughter's private school tuition. Of course, it was up to Bill and Helen to decide if they should take their children out of the public school system. Mother paid 2/3 of the tuition, Bill and Helen, the rest. In this case, a gift of $12,000 ended up costing Bill and Helen $6,000 a year. Moreover, Bill and Helen did not contemplate the additional expenses of sending their children to private school. For example, they are often asked to make contributions to the school beyond the cost of tuition. They also felt they needed to buy a 7-passenger station wagon so they could participate in the school's carpool. Books and related fees are also costly. And their children are now exposed to other children and parents who tend to have higher consumption lifestyles than was the case in the public school environment. In fact, their children are looking forward to traveling to Europe this summer. It's part of their education and socialization process. Gift receivers are significantly more likely than non-gift receivers to send their children to private schools. Although there are more children of non-gift receivers in private school overall, it is because the population of non-gift receivers is much larger than its counterpart. Gift receivers in general never fully distinguish between their wealth and the wealth of their gift-giving parents. Perhaps Tony Montage, a professional asset manager, said it best. Gift receivers, the adult children of the affluent, feel that their parents' wealth capital is their income to be spent. One of the main reasons gift receivers typically think of themselves as being financially well off is because they receive parental subsidies. And people who think they are financially well off tend to spend. In fact, statistically, they are just as likely to view themselves as being affluent as are truly affluent non-gift receivers. This is the case in spite of earning 91% of the income and having 81% of the wealth of non-receivers. Look at the situation from a gift receiver's side of the equation. During each year of his adult life, William receives an annual tax-free gift of $10,000 from his parents. William is 48 years of age. $10,000 of tax-free income could be viewed as the product of what amount of capital? Assume an 8% return. This would equate to $125,000 in the capital. Add this amount to his actual net worth. What is the result? William perceives himself as having $125,000 more in the capital than he does. Consider this analogy. Have you ever been confronted by an 8-year-old youngster standing in the front yard of his parents' home? If you, a stranger, attempt to walk onto the property, Billy or Janie will likely say, "You can't come into my yard. This is my property." Billy and Janie think that it is their property. At the age of 8, they may be correct. After all, they are children living at home. At this age, kids feel that the yard, the home, and the car are family property. But as the majority of Billy's and Janie's mature, they become properly socialized by their parents. They grow into independent adults who can easily distinguish between what is theirs and what is not. Their parents teach them independence. Unfortunately, a growing portion of adult children is not being taught the value of being emotionally and economically independent of their parents. How did one set of parents recently test to see if their adult son was independent? They used the montage effect as a basis for the test. After Thanksgiving dinner at his parents' home, James and his parents had a conversation. His parents told James that they had decided to give several pieces of their commercial property to the local private college. His father told his son, "I know you will understand that the college really will benefit from such a gift." James's response, if written as a headline, might read, "Son of affluent couple screams, 'That's my property, too, and the college people can't come in to my yard.'" James's response was predictable. He has received substantial cash gifts from his parents throughout his adult life. He needed an annual gift equivalent to about 20% of his income to cover his annual expenses. He viewed his parents' idea of giving their capital to the college as a threat to his future income. Like many other gift receivers, James views himself as self-made. In fact, about 2 of every 3 adult children who receive significant cash gifts periodically from their parents view themselves as members of the I Did It on My Own club. We are amazed when these people tell us in interviews, "We earned every dollar we have." Gift receivers are significantly more dependent on credit than are non-receivers. Those who receive periodic gifts of cash or its equivalent are euphoric about their economic well-being. The euphoria of this type is related to their need to spend money. But much of this money is not in hand. It is tomorrow's economic outpatient care. So how do gift receivers respond to this dilemma? They use credit vehicles to smooth out their problems with cash flow. Why wait for the windfall at the end of the rainbow? Adult children who receive cash gifts are more likely than other adult children to live in anticipation of the sizable inheritance eventually coming their way. In spite of having only about 91% of the total household annual income and 81% of the net worth of non-receivers of gifts, gift receivers are significantly more likely to be credit-oriented. This credit is obtained for consumption, not investment, purposes. Conversely, non-receivers of gifts borrow more for investment purposes than do gift receivers. Otherwise, in nearly every conceivable type of credit product/service category, gift receivers outpace non-receivers. This applies both to the incidence of credit usage and to the actual dollars spent to pay the interest on outstanding balances. It applies to personal loans and to unpaid balances on credit card loans. Gift receivers and non-receivers are not significantly different in their use of mortgage services or in the allocation of dollars for such purposes. However, a significant portion of the gift receivers was given money for sizable down payments on their homes. Receivers of gifts invest much less money than do non-receivers. When surveyed, gift receivers reported that they invested less than 65% of what non-receivers invested each year. Even this is a very conservative estimate, since, like most heavy credit users, gift receivers overestimate the amount of money they invest. For example, they often forget to take into account major credit purchases when computing actual consumption and investing habits. There are exceptions to this rule. Teachers and professors who receive gifts appear to remain as frugal or even more so than those who receive no gifts. They are much more likely to save and invest the money they receive as gifts than are gift receivers in other occupational categories. The issue of teachers and professors as role models is discussed more fully later in the chapter. As we have made clear, gift receivers are hyper-consumers and credit-prone. They live well above the norm for others with comparable incomes. But often people mistakenly believe that gift receivers are concerned solely with their own desires, needs, and interests. This is not the case. On average, gift receivers donate significantly more to charity than do others in the same income categories. For example, gift receivers who have annual household incomes in the $100,000 category normally donate just under 6% of their annual incomes to charitable causes. The general population in this income category donates only about 3%. Gift receivers give in proportions that are much like those of households with annual incomes in the $200,000 to $400,000 bracket. These people give approximately 6% of their income to noble causes. Noble or not, gift receivers consume more, so they have significantly less money to invest. What good does it do to be well-versed in investment opportunities when one has little or no money to invest? This is the situation in which a young professor of business recently found himself. He, a gift receiver, was asked to teach a course on investing for a continuing education program. His audience included many well-educated, high-income people. The professor discussed various topics, including sources of investment information and how to evaluate the stock offerings of various public corporations. The professor received high praise from his audience. He was well trained in his discipline. He held a PhD in business administration with a concentration in finance. However, near the end of the course, a gentleman from the audience asked the professor a simple question. "Dr. E, may I ask about your personal portfolio? What do you invest in?" His answer surprised most of the class. "I don't have much of a portfolio at present. I'm too involved with paying 2 mortgages, an auto loan, tuition." Later, a member of the class told us, "It's like the fellow who wrote the book on 100 clever things to say to attract women. But the guy did not know any good-looking women." A teacher and an attorney, a case study. Henry and Josh are brothers, but having the same parents does not mean that these two people are similar. Henry is 48 years of age, Josh is 46. Henry is a high school math teacher, Josh is an attorney and a partner in a modest-sized law firm. The brothers are 2 of 6 children born to millionaires Beryl and Susan, who accumulated their money by operating a successful contracting firm. The couple has always been generous with their children. Each year they have given Henry and Josh and their other son and daughters approximately $10,000 in cash. This gift-giving did not stop when their sons and daughters became adults. Beryl and Susan felt that such gifts would help reduce the size of their estate and thus reduce the inheritance tax their children would have to pay someday. Beryl and Susan also wanted to help their adult children get a good start in life. They felt that financial gifts would help their children ultimately become financially independent. Beryl and Susan were always democratic about distributing their wealth to their children. Each adult child received the same size cash gift each year. In addition, each child was given approximately the same amount of money to help purchase a first home. One might expect that the children in such families would become financially independent. Certainly, Beryl and Susan felt this way. They always assumed that they themselves would have been even more successful if they had attended college and subsequently received cash gifts from their parents. But their parents on both sides were poor. Beryl and Susan were successful because their parents gave them something other than money. Each was the product of disciplined home life. Beryl and Susan were not only well-disciplined, they also taught themselves how to deal with adversity, and adversity made them what they are today, successful millionaires. Tough times in the contracting business drive out the weak and unproductive. Beryl and Susan were never weak of heart and always ran a highly productive, low-cost operation. This applied to both their business and their household. Even today this couple has never owned a luxury automobile. They have never been on skis, never traveled abroad. Nor have they ever joined a country club. But somehow they assume that if their adult children could be exposed to the wisdom gained from college, travel abroad, and associating with higher status people in general, that they would outperform their parents economically. Beryl and Susan were wrong in making such assumptions. The children of affluent parents don't automatically perform as well as their parents in terms of accumulating wealth. This is not to say that the Henrys and Joshes of America will never outpace their parents. Some do. But they are a minority among all the children of the affluent. It's important to note that the children of affluent parents have, in today's dollars, about a 1 in 5 chance of accumulating wealth in the 7 figures during their lifetimes, while the average child in this country whose parents are not millionaires has about a 1 in 30 chance. Are any of the children of Beryl and Susan millionaires today? No. But one is more likely to become a member of the 7-figure net worth club soon. Will it be Henry or Josh or one of the other children? Beryl and Susan's other children are considerably younger than Henry and Joshua. Certainly, age is a correlate of wealth accumulation. Young adults are not likely to have accumulated considerable wealth on their own. Also, the other 4 children have not been receiving economic outpatient care from their parents for the same length of time as their older brothers. Many observers might predict that Josh would more likely accumulate a 7-figure level of net worth before his brother. It is certainly understandable that they would feel this way. Attorneys typically generate significantly higher incomes than high school teachers. Once again, income is highly correlated with wealth accumulation. Last year Henry's total household income, not including the gift of cash from Beryl and Susan, was $71,000, Josh's was $123,000. One would assume just from these figures that Josh would be much more likely to accumulate wealth. After all, his income is nearly twice that of his brother's. But observers who make such predictions overlook the fundamental rule regarding wealth building. Whatever your income, always live below your means. Henry, in spite of his smaller salary, lives below his means. Josh, on the other hand, lives substantially above his income. In fact, Josh really counts on that $10,000 from Dad and Mom to keep in balance. The $10,000 added to his $123,000 income places him in the top 4% of all income-producing households in America. Remember that approximately 3.5% of the households in America have a net worth of $1 million or more. But Josh has a net worth that even optimistically estimated is well beneath that figure. His total net worth, including the equity in his home, law partnership, pension, and other assets is $553,000. How about Henry? In spite of his much smaller income, Henry has accumulated significantly more wealth. Stated conservatively, his net worth is $834,000. How is it possible for a teacher to have so much more wealth than an attorney with nearly twice the income? Stated simply, Henry and his wife are frugal, Josh and his wife are heavy consumers. Much of this difference is related to their respective positions. We find that, as a group, teachers are frugal. Additionally, attorneys who receive cash gifts from their parents spend more and save and invest less than do attorneys who are comparable in age but receive no gifts. As stated earlier, attorneys who receive cash gifts from their parents have only 62% of the wealth and 77% of the income of attorneys in the same age bracket who receive no gifts. Where do teachers who receive gifts rank along the dimensions of wealth accumulation and income? Households headed by teachers who receive cash gifts from their parents have, on average, 185% of the net worth and 92% of the annual household income of those in the same occupational and age category who do not receive cash gifts. Teachers who receive gifts are more likely than non-receivers to teach in private schools, which generally pay their faculty lower salaries than do public schools. Perhaps unknowingly, many of the Burls and Susans in America are subsidizing private schools by giving cash gifts to their adult children. This, in turn, may encourage people like Henry to be willing to work for less money in a private school. Henry may figure that since he receives economic outpatient care, he does not need to earn a few $1,000s more teaching in a public school. And although he teaches at a private school, Henry is quite comfortable driving his 4-year-old Honda Accord or his wife's minivan. By contrast, Josh is in a completely different environment. In fact, the office complex where he parks his car is filled with imported luxury sedans and sports cars. Josh is responsible in part for new business development for his firm. So even if he would like to drive a 4-year-old Honda, his clients and prospective clients might not wish to ride along with him. They might get the wrong impression. Josh and his wife have 3 late-model automobiles. These include a 7 Series BMW and a 7-passenger Volvo, both leased, and a Toyota Supra. His consumption habits regarding motor vehicles are similar to those of other consumers who have significantly higher incomes. Josh spends 3 times more on average than Henry on motor vehicles. Josh also spends nearly twice as much as Henry on mortgage payments. Josh lives in a larger, more luxurious home, in a so-called prestigious subdivision. Henry lives in a much more modest home in a middle-class neighborhood. Henry's neighbors are teachers, middle managers, civil servants, and store managers. Henry and his family blend in nicely in this neighborhood. The consumption habits they display are very middle class. This is true even though Henry's household has 4 to 5 times more accumulated wealth than its typical neighbor. What about Josh's neighborhood? His primary residence, he also has a timeshare in ski country, is in an upscale neighborhood. His neighbors are high-income producing physicians, senior corporate executives, top-earning sales and marketing professionals, attorneys, and affluent entrepreneurs. Josh feels comfortable in this environment, and it is ideal for entertaining clients as well as associates. But there is something Josh does not realize: although his income is in the third quartile compared with that of his neighbors, he is near the bottom in terms of his household net worth. Josh and his family are playing the role of those with 2, 3, and even more times the net worth they have. Josh, you are not alone. At least 1 in 5 households in your neighborhood is playing the same role. They, too, are on outpatient care. They, too, spend more and invest less than others in their area. How does Josh's budgeting system operate? How does it accommodate his propensity to spend? Josh is like many other underaccumulators of wealth. He spends first. He saves and invests what is left over. What this actually means is that he saves and invests nothing beyond what happens to be injected into his pension and profit-sharing plan. More than 2/3 of his wealth is the equity in his home, his partnership, and his pension. In essence, Josh and his family invest $0 from their personal income. But perhaps they feel affluent anyway. Josh does receive $10,000 in cash each year. And he anticipates inheriting much more someday. But what about Josh's children? Are they likely to receive substantial cash gifts from their father? It is very unlikely. Yet these children are growing up in a high-consumption environment. They will likely attempt to imitate their father's consumption behavior. This is a difficult act to follow, especially without the help of substantial outpatient care. Henry's children, in contrast, may be surprised to learn that their father has accumulated a small fortune. Henry and his wife have never overextended themselves. Henry looks like a teacher, drives what teachers drive, dresses like a teacher, shops where teachers shop. He has none of the designer artifacts his brother owns. Henry has no pool, no sauna, no hot tub, no sailboat, no country club membership. He owns 2 suits and 3 sports jackets. Henry's activities are much simpler, cost much less, and are much less status-oriented. He exercises by jogging every other day. He and his families are avid hikers and campers. They do own 2 tents, several sleeping bags, and 2 canoes, 1 used. Henry reads a great deal and is active in his church and its affiliated youth group. His simpler lifestyle translates into surplus dollars, which are saved and invested. During Henry's first year as a teacher, a senior member of the faculty advised him to enhance his investments by contributing to a 403(b) deferred annuity program. Henry has contributed to this program each year since he has been employed as a teacher. He has also invested most of the cash gifts his parents have given him each year. Who will be more likely to retire in comfort someday, Henry or Josh? Their parents are now distributing their capital not only to their children but also to their grandchildren. Thus, Henry and Josh may inherit very little. At the rate Josh is consuming, he may never be able to retire in comfort. Henry will likely retire with ease. Projections are that his combined pension, deferred annuity package, and investment portfolio will be substantial by the time he reaches the age of 65. Teach your children to fish. When we lecture about the relationship between cash gifts and economic achievement, people from the audience typically ask, if not cash, then what form of gifts are more beneficial? They are eager to learn how to enhance the economic productivity of their children. Here again, we remind them that teaching their children to be frugal is critical. Often those who are trained to be otherwise as children become adult hyperspenders, needing cash subsidies during their young and middle adult years. What intergenerational transfers could help your children become economically productive adults? What should you give them? The affluent have a great appreciation for the value of high-quality education. We asked millionaires if they agreed with the following statement. School/college learning was of little use to me in the real world of making a living. Only 14% agreed, 6% had no opinion, and the balance, 80%, disagreed. That's why millionaires spend a large number of their resources on their children's educations. What was the most frequently mentioned gift that millionaires received from their parents? Tuition. All other economic gifts are mentioned by a significantly smaller proportion of millionaires. About 1 in 3 received some financial support in purchasing his first home, about 1 in 5 received an interest-free loan during his lifetime, only 1 in 35 ever received funds from his parents for mortgage payments. What can you give your children to enhance the probability that they will become economically productive adults? In addition to education, create an environment that honors independent thoughts and deeds, cherishes individual achievements, and rewards responsibility and leadership. Yes, the best things in life are often free. Teach your own to live on their own. It's much less costly financially, and, in the long run, it is in the best interests of both the children and their parents. There are countless examples of the inverse relationship between economic productivity and the presence of substantial economic gifts. Our own data, collected over the past 20 years, repeatedly support this conclusion. Independent of college tuition, more than 2/3 of American millionaires received no economic gifts from their parents. And this includes most of those whose parents were affluent. Weakening the weak. So what are affluent parents to do with their wealth? How and when should they distribute it among their children? We will detail the distribution of wealth in the next chapter. But at this point, here's some food for thought. Most affluent people have at least 2 children. Typically, the most economically productive one receives the smaller share of his or her parents' wealth, while the least productive receives the lion's share of both economic outpatient care and inheritance. Consider for a moment that you are a typical affluent parent. You noted that your oldest son or daughter even at an early age was extremely independent, achievement-oriented, and well-disciplined. Your instinct is to nurture these traits by not trying to control his or her decisions. Instead, you spend more time helping your less resourceful child make decisions, or you actually make decisions for him. With what result? You strengthen the strong child and weaken the weak. Suppose you have a 10-year-old child who goes in for a physical checkup. The examining physician tells you that your son or daughter is underweight and underdeveloped. How would you respond to this evaluation? You would find ways to improve your child's physical health. You would likely encourage your child to exercise, take vitamins, lift weights, and perhaps play sports. Most parents would attack such a problem proactively. Wouldn't you find it odd if the parent took the opposite course? How would you respond if the parent encouraged his child to eat less and exercise less? All too often this method of weakening the weak is applied to children who show personality-related weaknesses. In one case we know about, parents were told that their son was deficient in writing and related verbal skills. How did the parents respond to this problem? First, they transferred their child to another school. The verbal deficiency problem failed to improve, however, so the father began writing his son's papers. He still writes his son's papers today. His son is a junior in college. In another case, an affluent couple had a 12-year-old daughter who was very shy and rarely spoke to anyone without some prompting. Concerned about her daughter, the mother wrote a note to her daughter's teacher, asking that the child's seat be moved from the front to the back of the room since her daughter felt more comfortable there. The mother reported that the kids in front were too often asked questions by their teacher. The day the teacher received this request, she did not make any changes in the seating. The mother called the teacher that afternoon to protest. The teacher was unavailable, but she did return the call the next afternoon. Feeling slighted, the mother immediately transferred her daughter to another school. In yet another case, a distinguished professor recently received a telephone call from his neighbor. The caller was irate. "Caller, doctor, you're in this business. I need your advice. How can I go about getting a professor fired? You probably don't know this guy. He's at the state university." "Professor, why do you want to have him fired?" "Caller, my daughter is failing his course. He says she lacks the background to do well in his class. He has long hair. He never wears a suit. He's a jerk. I have already spoken to his chairman. I'm getting the runaround. I want this guy fired." "Professor, well, why doesn't your daughter just withdraw from the class?" "Caller, then she will have to go to summer school." Professor, there are a lot worse things than summer school. Caller, if she goes to summer school, she can't go to Europe with us. We have planned this trip for 2 years. Her mother won't go without her daughter. What can I do? What have all the parents done in these cases? They have contributed to weakening the weak. If your son has a deficiency in his verbal skills, make a commitment to overcome his handicap. In one case, a father recognized that his son had an extremely high aptitude in mathematics but that his verbal skills were poor. His dad attacked the problem. Each night during dinner, Dad would ask his son to define 3 words taken from the SAT study guide. During hundreds of dinner sessions, Dad tutored his son. He also hired a professional tutor for him. This combination worked. Today his son is a graduate of a top Ivy League school, the one with the highest entrance requirements. What happens when weakened children become adults? They typically lack initiative. More often than not, they are economic underachievers but have a high propensity to spend. That's why they need economic subsidies to maintain the standard of living they enjoyed in their parents' home. We will say it again. The more dollars adult children receive, the fewer dollars they accumulate, while those who are given fewer dollars accumulate more. This is a statistically proven relationship. Yet many parents still think that their wealth can automatically transform their children into economically productive adults. They are wrong. Discipline and initiative can't be purchased like automobiles or clothing off a rack. A recent case study will help illustrate our point. A wealthy couple was determined to give their daughter, Ms. BPF, every advantage. So when Ms. BPF expressed some interest in starting a business, they responded in a typical fashion. They created what they thought would be the ideal environment. First, they wanted her to be debt-free. So they put up all the money for their daughter to start her business. Ms. BPF put up nothing of her own. She never even applied for a commercial loan. Second, the parents felt a strong need to provide her with substantial economic outpatient care. They felt this would enhance their daughter's chance of succeeding among the ranks of America's entrepreneurs. Ms. BPF's parents believed their adult daughter would benefit from living at home. This way Ms. BPF could put all her energy and resources into her business. She would live with her parents rent-free. She would not have to allocate any time to shop for groceries, cleaning the house, or even making her bed. This ultimate form of the subsidy goes beyond economic outpatient care. Call it economic inpatient care. Is a rent-free environment ideal for a young entrepreneur? We don't think so. Nor is the gift of a business. The most successful business owners are the ones who put much of their own resources behind their ventures. Many succeed because they have to succeed. It's their money, their product, their reputation. They have no safety net. They have no one else to rely upon for their success or failure. Third, the parents of Ms. BPF added yet another element to the equation. What if their daughter did not have to worry initially about generating profits from her venture? They believed that reducing this burden would enhance their daughter's probability for success. Ms. BPF became yet another member of the subsidized cluster. Her parents give her approximately $60,000 in cash and equivalents each year. What is the result of having created this ideal environment? Today Ms. BPF is in her late 30s. She still lives at home. She has no commercial-related debts. Her folks financed her business and continue to do so. Last year her business earned her nearly $50,000. Her parents continue to give her $60,000 every year. They still feel that Ms. BPF will become truly independent sometime in the future. We are not as optimistic as her parents in this regard. Most successful entrepreneurs are not like Ms. BPF. How many entrepreneurs who are still in the startup phase of their venture would do what Ms. BPF has recently done in 1 year? Purchased a $45,000 automobile without shopping or negotiating the price or conditions. Paid $5,000 for a watch, $2,000 for a suit, and $600 for a pair of shoes. Paid more than $20,000 for clothing in general. Paid more than $7,000 for interest on credit card balances and revolving retail credit. paid more than $10,000 for dues/fees at area country clubs? The answer is very few. Ms. BPF's business is not really a success. It is heavily subsidized directly and indirectly via other people's money. Actually, Ms. BPF has been shortchanged by her parents. She may never know if she could make it on her own. The ideal conditions they provided for their daughter were an incentive for her to spend heavily on consumer goods. All the while she gave her business stepchild treatment. Who do you think has more fears and worries, Ms. BPF or the typical unsubsidized affluent business owner? Logic might suggest that Ms. BPF should have no worries at all since she receives intensive economic care from her parents. In fact, she has many more fears than do affluent men and women who receive no subsidies whatsoever. Typical affluent business owners have only 3 major concerns. All of these are related to the federal government. They fear policies and regulations that are unfavorable to business owners and the affluent population in general. What does Ms. BPF fear? She told us that she had 12 major fears. How is it possible that a person who is almost completely insulated from financial risk has 4 times more fears than the typical affluent business owner? Because these affluent business owners have overcome most of their fears. They have inoculated themselves from many fears by becoming completely self-sufficient. And it was the very struggle to become economically self-sufficient that helped these business owners overcome them. What are some of Ms. BPF's major fears and concerns? Remember, these are fears that are not paramount among the self-sustaining affluent population. Ms. BPF has substantial fear of the following: her parents' estate being heavily taxed, experiencing a significant reduction in her standard of living, her business failing, not being wealthy enough to retire in comfort, being accused by her brothers and sisters of receiving more than her fair share of financial gifts and inheritance from their parents. Who is more confident, more content, more able to deal with adversity? It's not the Ms. BPFs of America. It's those who have been brought up by parents who rewarded independent thought and behavior. It's those who don't concern themselves with other people's money, who are more concerned about succeeding than about how much is in someone else's estate. Also, if one lives below one's means, one doesn't have to be concerned with the possibility of being forced to reduce one's standard of living. The parents of Ms. BPF have failed to obtain their objective. Their goal was to have a daughter who would never have to worry. But the method they used yielded just the opposite result. People often attempt to shelter their children from the economic realities of life. But such shelters often produce adults who are in constant fear of tomorrow. How valuable is your signature? It depends on how it is used. A signature helped Paul Orfalea start the business that bears his nickname Kinko's. With a $5,000 loan, co-signed by his father in 1969, he rented a small garage. From there he and a few friends sold about $2,000 worth of services daily. Kinko's adds internet services to its copying business. It is estimated that Kinko's has annual sales in excess of $600 million. But what if Mr. Orfalea's parents had socialized their son in an environment similar to Ms. BPF's? Would he be as productive today? It's very unlikely. Mr. Orfalea has what all successful business owners possess: considerable courage. Taking financial risk is evidence of courage. But what risk has Ms. BPF ever taken? Very little. Webster's defines courage as mental or moral strength to resist opposition, danger, or hardship. It implies firmness of mind and will in the face of danger or extreme difficulty. Courage can be developed. But it cannot be nurtured in an environment that eliminates all risks, all difficulty, all dangers. That is precisely why Ms. BPF lacks the courage to leave home, expand her business, and wean herself from heavy doses of economic inpatient care. It takes considerable courage to work in an environment in which one is compensated according to one's performance. Most affluent people have courage. What evidence supports this statement? Most affluent people in America are either business owners or employees who are paid on an incentive basis. Remember, Whether their parents were wealthy or not, most of the affluent in America acquired their wealth on their own. They had the courage to undertake entrepreneurial and other business opportunities that were associated with considerable risk. One of the greatest entrepreneurs and extraordinary sales professionals of all time, Ray Kroc, looked for courage in selecting potential McDonald's franchise owners and executives. Kroc actually welcomed cold-calling sales professionals. He told his secretary to send all of them in. Why? Because it's not easy finding people who have the courage to be evaluated strictly on their own performance. He sold his first franchise outside California for $950 to Sanford and Betty Agate, see John Love, McDonald LS, Behind the Arches. Kroc first encountered Betty Agate while she was making cold calls on people in Chicago's financial district. Kroc's secretary asked, "What the hell is a Jew doing selling Catholic Bibles?" "Making a living," was her reply. Kroc reasoned that anyone courageous enough to do what Betty Agate was doing would be a prime prospect for purchasing one of his franchises. How many cold calls has Ms. BPF made in her life? 0. Most of the people who buy from her are friends or business associates of her parents and relatives. Calls to these people are warm calls. Parents often ask us how to instill courage in their children. We suggest that children be exposed to the sales profession. Encourage your children to run for class office in their elementary or high school. They will have to sell themselves to the student body. Even selling Girl Scout cookies can have a positive impact. Retail sales jobs provide another way for children to be evaluated by very objective third parties. Guess where your colleague was at 5:30 a.m. this morning? I was boarding an early bird flight. Although the plane had room for more than 100 passengers, only about 20 people were on board. Soon after I sat down, we were told there was fog over the destination and that there would be another famous short delay. As I stood up, the woman sitting in front of me also stood up. I mentioned to her that I was displeased about having to get up so early to make this flight. She responded that she had been flying all night and still had one more leg in her flight. I asked Laura why she was traveling at night. She replied that it was a lot more economical to do so. What I found out shortly thereafter was that this woman did not have to fly via a highly discounted ticket. She, in fact, was affluent, but she was also very frugal. What was the purpose of Laura's travel? She was en route to a conference of real estate executives, where she was to receive the Real Estate Executive of the Year award. I then asked her how she first became involved in the real estate profession. Laura replied, "Out of necessity." Laura told me that one morning she found a note from her husband on the kitchen table. Allow me to quote the contents. "Dear Laura, I'm in love with my secretary. My attorney will fill you in on the details. Wish you and the children good luck." How did Laura, a housewife with 3 small children, respond to this information? She was determined not to return to her old job as a high school teacher. Nor would she ever ask her well-to-do parents for economic support. She had grown up in an environment that nurtured independence and discipline. She wondered what she could do with undergraduate and master's degrees in English literature. She discovered that people with her educational background were in great supply and reasoned that her income from her teaching, editing, and writing jobs were not likely to be enough to support her family's current lifestyle. Thereupon, Laura discussed various employment opportunities with several enlightened business owners in the community. After these discussions, she decided to try the field of real estate sales. During her first 4 months, she earned more selling real estate than she did in her best year teaching English. I know you would want to ask Laura the factors she feels contributed to her success. She told me this: "It's amazing what you can do when you set your mind to it. You'll be surprised how many sales calls you can make when you have no alternative except to succeed." As a young woman, Laura had developed an excellent foundation for her sales career. While attending school, she had convinced dozens of employers to hire her for summer jobs. She also had a variety of part-time jobs while attending high school and college. Laura was so good at finding jobs that she helped many of her friends find employment. No doubt she could have had much success in starting an executive recruiting firm. Laura was also the campaign manager for several of her friends who won student government offices in both high school and college. It's ironic that Laura's misfortune in marrying a man who lacked integrity eventually translated into a much better life for her and her children. Because of his transgressions, Laura was able to fully utilize all her talents. The irony is that she always had more potential than her husband to excel in the business world. It's a proven fact today. She is much better off than her former husband. Her success is also a function of her high level of integrity, something that was lacking in her former husband. After several banner years as a sales professional, Laura founded a highly successful real estate company. In spite of her dramatic financial success, she still flies on the red-eyes and early birds. You would never think this woman had so much courage and stamina just by looking at her. I would estimate that she is barely 5 feet tall and weighs no more than 95 pounds. However, as we have often agreed, appearances are much less important than the courage, discipline, and resolve of people who are economically productive. This was Chapter 5, of The Millionaire Next Door book. Please check the next Chapter 6, Affirmative Action, Family Style. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and comment below which book should we read next. Thank you for your support and bye-bye now my lovely friends.